kindred seated, who met with death upon the battlefield, who in the end fell and were defeated. And the way they were tricked by death, betrayed, leveled and mistreated, a stuck-on knife in a man for less. But death is not so easily defeated. And you can pray for life, but no, my friend, my dearest friend, please know this, that life is but death's own right hand man, in every piece of his own left hand business. Towards those two, and we as they joined and double-threaded, and arms flung wide, we'll run towards those two. We'll never fear that which once we dreaded.
So that's the voice of Alistair Roberts giving us a beautiful, poignant start to the programme tonight with his song Farewell Sorrow, inspired by a book that he read in his student days, which was called The Buried Soul, How Humans Invented Death. Alistair is the man who has the Midas touch, I think, when it comes to writing these kinds of new songs that sound like they've just been around for many generations. And he is one of many guests that we have here on stage tonight at the tent at the BBC Hub on the site of George Heriot School in Edinburgh. We have some searing melodies for you. We just had one already. Some improvisation. We're going to have some spoken words tonight, even a musical saw. But our next guest is probably the only one tonight who's actually built the instrument that she's going to play on. She is Lauren Sarah Hayes, and she's standing here behind a bit of an octopus of gadgetry, I should say. And it's a system that she's designed to be deliberately challenging and unpredictable. So we're going to see where it takes her tonight. Well, I imagine we have many Lau fans in the house tonight. Do we have some Lau fans in the house tonight? So it's very nice to have Aidan O'Rourke to play for us solo tonight, which of course is a great Scottish tradition, isn't it, really? And that tune following on from Lauren Sarah Hayes. Thank you, Lauren. And we'll hear more from her a little bit later on and her electronic skitterings. But Aidan is here tonight with James Robertson, who wrote a book called 365, a short story for every day of the year. He challenged himself to write. And that in turn sort of Aidan took on as an idea to write a tune every day for a year. So what was the tune we just heard, Aidan? What was the time of year? I was trying to kind of pin that down.
That tune was from October the 20th, I think, and it's a tune called The Room is in Darkness. The confusion is that James has a particular title for each of his stories, and rather than steal his title, I stole the first line of each of his stories as my title. So it's hard to keep track.
Okay. And a tune a day is actually a big ask, isn't it? One of those days where you just thought, actually, I can't be bothered, or...
About 310.
I knew it. And James, I mean, what inspired you to do it in the first instance?
Insanity. I just woke up on the 1st of January and thought I'd set myself this challenge, and just to give it a bit more symmetry, I thought every story will also be exactly 365 words long. So it really, 365 times 365. But I thought that was easy until I heard what Aidan was doing.
I was going to ask if it's a bit like improvisation in music, because I know, Aidan, you sit down to write a tune, you kind of get an idea in your head, don't you? And you kind of go with that and record at the same time, and then kind of go back to that recording and pick out the good bits, which is a lovely process to do. I don't know if it's similar to writing. Maybe it is. Do you write a stream of consciousness and then hone it down?
Yeah, with all of these stories, I ended up writing 500 or 600 words and then had to edit them down, which was a task that I'd set to students and so on before. And I thought I should really set myself the same task. So it was sometimes a nightmare trying to get it down to the right length.
And Aidan, I slightly sense that you're mellowing, are you? There's not this freneticism in your tunes that we're so used to with Lau, aren't we? We're going to hear some nice gentleness.
Yes, I've hit 25 recently, so...
Absolutely. So, James, you are going to be reading us some of the stories. You have your book in hand. Where are you going to start now? Which day are we on?
This is the 18th of March, and the story is called The Man on the Bus. I used not to be able to read on buses. It made me feel sick. But recently I found I've got over that. Maybe it's a benefit of maturity. I'm glad, anyway. There is so much still to read and not much time left. Or maybe there is. But how would one know? I was deep in a collection of stories by a writer new to me, recommended by someone whose opinion I respect. The stories were powerful. They told of a section of society about which I knew nothing, yet I found the characters completely convincing. I was hardly aware of the man in the seat next to me until I heard him say, "Excuse me," twice, and realised he was addressing me. I'm sorry, I said, looking up. Are you enjoying that book? He asked. Yes, I am, I said, slightly annoyed. I'm glad, he said, smiling. I wrote it. I looked at him more closely. His claim seemed unlikely, judging by his dishevelled clothing, malodorous smell, and bloodshot eyes. But as soon as I thought this, I realised how flawed my reasoning was. He was indeed not unlike some of the very characters I had been reading about. Well, I said, if you did, I congratulate you. It is excellent. You don't believe me? You must admit, I said, this is not something that happens every day. He smiled again. On the contrary, I meet characters from my stories every day of my life. That's not quite the same thing, I said. It is if you are me, he said. Of course, the people I meet don't usually know it, especially if they have yet to appear in one of my stories. Well, this is my stop. I hope you continue to enjoy the book. Goodbye. I watched him make his way to the front of the bus and get off. It was only then that I remembered that on the inside back cover of the book was a photograph of the author. The picture was grainy and distant and showed a much younger, neater man than the one who had been sitting beside me. But that, I understood, did not prove a thing.
So Man on the Bus, and then taking that first line, Aidan's tune, I used not to be able to read on buses. And Aidan and James Robertson are going to be showcasing this project at the Edinburgh Book Festival on August the 17th. So we're here live with Late Junction at the Edinburgh Festivals, and one venue that never fails to deliver powerful theatre during the Edinburgh Fringe is the Traverse Theatre, which is solely dedicated to new writing. And this week it's staging a play called Adam, which tells a young transgender man's story of exile from his birth country of Egypt. It's incredibly moving and absorbing. I saw it this morning. And music-wise, at the climax of this tale, it features the first ever international digital choir of transgender and non-binary people, which means they all collaborated online and they recorded music which was specially written by Jocelyn Pook. It's a National Theatre of Scotland production, and last week I called on Jocelyn Pook at her home studio in North London. So Jocelyn, found you here in your studio in London. It seems like a really sort of creative space. Looks like it's well lived in. You've been here a long time.
Yeah, I have been here a long time. Yeah, and it's unusual for a studio because it's not in a dark basement, because I couldn't bear that. I put up with their noises, the cars and the sirens and the helicopters and the school next door.
Yeah, all sort of feeds in.
They appear in my recordings, but it's worth it to have the light.
Lots of natural light coming in, lovely wooden floor, and lots of busyness going on. And of course, we're here to talk to you about the piece that you're taking to Edinburgh, Adam, a play written by Francis Poet, directed by Cora Bissett. You've written music for it involving the Adam World Choir, which is it's been put together virtually around the world on the internet. How does this work?
We put out the word to, I guess, the transgender community all over the world, inviting them to take part in this project. And in particular, there are 2 songs that they've learnt and sung. So they've each recorded on their laptops, iPhones, whatever their devices are. They've recorded themselves singing these songs.
So you've put some music up there that they can access?
Yes, and they have their particular parts, so bass, tenor. You know, most of them are middle voices, but there are a surprising number of sopranos and basses in there.
It seems quite a challenge. So people are recording their parts in their own environment and sending it to you, and you're just literally putting them together, layering them electronically to make this choir sound. But
Yeah,
did that actually work? Because tuning and all sorts, and timing and everything.
Tell me about it. Because, there's these little variances of timings and...
Because you're not dealing with musicians necessarily.
No, not at all. I mean, there were some very good singers and musicians in there, in the mix, but they were just an amateur choir, if you like, you know, that... Yeah, they've all had to do it with headphones on
and film themselves doing it. And all in one take.
Wow. So it was quite a challenge, but it's a very powerful moment. It's also very poignant because a lot of them are really struggling and isolated, and obviously in certain countries it's not acceptable in that society, and it's a terrible struggle for these people, and some of them are very isolated. So the fact that they are all in their own kind of boxes, if you like, you know, they're all on screen, but they're all in their own worlds, is even more poignant. They appear like a collage of photos and, you know, all over this huge screen. And when we actually see them and hear their voices, it's incredibly powerful and moving.
This is from Sweden. I'm male, FTM to be exact, and that came out in 2012.
This is how I constructed myself, rather than having friends, because I had no role models that fit.
Well, the coming out part was very mind-boggling and, to be fair, quite frightening, since you never know what will happen or how people will react.
I'm painfully aware of how fortunate I am.
For he is not free. And you've lived most of your life with these birth shackles, never being able to be yourself, to smile from the heart.
What if you could change your gender? What if transgender people were just people?
Can the soul of a man be trapped in the body of a woman? Can the soul of a woman be trapped in the body of a man? Can the soul of a man be trapped in the body of a woman? Trapped in the body of a woman. I am Yusra. I am Alexis. I am Max from Massachusetts. I am Pakistan. Swedish. I fought for my right to be myself. I have the heart and soul of a man, but the body of a woman. Soul of a man. I knew I was different from the age of 4. I never felt at home in my body. I always felt I didn't fit. I always felt I didn't fit. I used to feel like I was from another world. Listen, can you hear us? Listen, can you hear us?
So the music of Jocelyn Pook and a piece she wrote for the Global Transgender Choir for this production at the Traverse Theatre called Adam. Now, Alistair Roberts is back on stage with his bandmates tonight, Stevie Jones and Debbie Elmore. Can't actually keep up with the amount of things that Alistair is involved with these days. If he's not on the road winning awards with the Furrow Collective, he's working alongside Trembling Bells drummer Alex Nielsen, or penning another set of captivating songs for his many solo releases. He's an avid reader of philosophy and anthropology, and with his songwriting, he draws as much on that as on history and the Scottish tradition. He has a very healthy obsession with Scottish murder ballads. So, to sing for us now his song, An Altar in the Glade, please welcome back Alistair Roberts.
Well, I startled a deer in the wood, and I saw her run away. She darted down a road, and I chased her all day. Well, a tree gave a creak to my left, and a shudder to my right. And she hurtled down a cliff, and she vanished out of sight. I charted her tracks as I could to an altar in the glade, hewn of marble crude, where often I'd prayed. Well, I cornered her there where she stood, dappled in the sun. She had a broken leg and I had a broken gun. Sang a hoodie cross, some unsuspecting vermin vexen, hovering low with opening jaw, with undrawn claw and tendon flexing. Fouler still, a herring gull, come to call the hungry nestling, hollow old skull and feathers all dull, on wearing pinions never resting. Ugly sang the hoodie crow, some unsuspecting vermin vexen, hovering low with opening jaw, with undrawn claw and tendon flexing. Fouler still, the herring gull, come to call the hungry nestling, hollow old skull and feathers all dull, on wearing pinions never resting.
So we're delighted to have been joined tonight by this adept group of improvisers, many of whom play in the Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra. Stuart Brown, Una McClone, Jim McEwen, Sue Lee, Graham Wilson, and at the helm we have Raymond MacDonald, who teaches improvisation and music psychology at the University of Edinburgh. How much teaching does improvisation take, Raymond? Can we all improvise? If we all listen, can we all improvise?
Yes, I think we are. We are all improvisers. It's a very natural way to communicate. And I think when teaching improvisation, a lot of it is involved in giving people confidence to express themselves, giving people opportunities to look at new ways of communicating, not just through music, but sometimes through dance, through art. And we're particularly interested in trying to bring people together to collaborate in lots of different contexts. So I think you're absolutely right. We're not teaching improvisation per se. We're looking to give people opportunities to explore their creativity in different ways.
It's certainly something that a lot of people wish they could do, myself included, and never quite dare to try. So thank you for bringing this group along tonight. So you're going to play a piece of yours now, which is called Overshadowing. I'm actually loath to ask you about this because I know it's all about the pointlessness of talking about music, which basically puts me out of a job. So should we say anything, or...?
Well, I think when we try to describe music, it is very difficult to capture.
Tell me about it.
But when you try, we do find really important things about the music. And so, you know, Elvis Costello is often misquoted as saying, talking about music is like tap dancing about architecture. But actually, as we try to talk about music, it influences how we hear music and how we play music and how we perform music. And so it is important.
It does indeed. Okay, well, let's just hear it. This is Overshadowing. Raymond MacDonald and friends and their piece Overshadowing, and Raymond giving them some big, emphatic hand gestures throughout some of that to kind of structure the piece as it went along. One of the players here, Sue Lee on cello, also plays with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. So at the weekend, Sue, you were on stage in the Usher Hall playing classical music. You obviously cut free as an improviser as well. But recently you made it your business to learn the musical saw. Now, why?
I would have to say it's not that recent. It's probably nearly 20 years ago now.
Also, you're quite a virtuoso. Beg your pardon.
No, but the reason I started playing is I played with a band. I still play with a band called Mr. McFall's Chamber. And at the time, we were doing a lot of experimenting. And I guess I wanted to learn a second instrument. So I spoke to Robert McFall, who's the founder, and asked him what he thought about a second instrument. Did he have any ideas? And he said, well, at the time we were working on some cartoon music from Holland, and there's the man that was doing all the is actually, you'll know all about this, but we were he plays the bass, and his name is Gert-Jan Blom, and he suggested that I go and study with him, which I promptly did. So I went over to Holland, took a saw lesson. He took me off to the shop, bought a saw, and then took it off up to the Highlands of Scotland and sat on a beach in Applecross and basically learned it on the beach on a stone.
Is it actually a saw? Can it cut wood?
It can cut wood. Most people don't think that the saw has teeth, but it certainly does. I'm going to show you. Hold on.
So you have it here, just putting down this rather beautiful cello that you have, and picking up an equally beautiful, quite a long saw, literally, with teeth. You're not going to use the same bow, surely? Is that that's
it's a bass bow.
It's double bass bow, okay. So you've just placed it between your knees, so I mean, is there a kind of technique? I mean, obviously, if it took you a long time to learn, there is a technique and a lot to learn, but what's the basic principle? You've got to bend it.
Essentially, you have to. It's a resonating piece of steel. You can just. It needs to have a little bit of tension on two sides at the same time. Forward and back, and then the saw sings. Yeah.
So you need to be strong?
No, in fact, the first time when you start, you often try too hard. That's the problem when you get really sore hands. But when you realise that you don't actually have to try very hard at all, everything becomes a lot easier.
Sore hands. I like that. That's very good. Great. So can we all do this at home? Go down the tool shed? Yeah? Brilliant. All right. So demonstrate it for us, if you wouldn't mind. What a marvellous sound that is. Sue Lee playing the musical saw, Jim McEwen on piano, and that was Moon River. You're listening to Late Junction on BBC Radio 3, coming live from the BBC stage at the Hub here in Edinburgh. And in a moment, we are going to be back with Lauren Sarah Hayes. But just going back to the International Festival, earlier today, I met up with the tenor, Julien Prégardien, who is part of a group who are staging what sounds like a bit like a kind of 19th century European version of a Scottish ceilidh, because it's an evening of song, music, poetry, and maybe even dancing. I'm not sure they're going to go quite that far. Although in this case, rather than stripping the willow, it's all centering around some very gracious arrangements of songs by Schubert.
We just invite the public to a journey in the 1830s, maybe short after Schubert's death, and visit music lovers who find his music and decide to make it living. But they don't have a piano. That's a pity, because it is piano music. And we try with our Schubertiade not only to give Schubert's music some historically informed colors, but also to give a hint on the social circumstance that friends meet and make music and play games.
And it's beautiful hearing your voice with these instruments. You've got the flute and the theorbo and the baritone. And I mean, the piano was a very different instrument in Schubert's day, wasn't it? We're familiar now with hearing it, like you say, with the Steinway Grand, which is not how it would have been. So it brings out an essence in your voice. It makes us hear the breath, I suppose. Is that? Yeah,
it is. And this is the link between the voice and the flute and the baritone. It is that a tone can be formed while it's living already. With a piano, you give your best to make the tone living or to give it birth. But then it's the piano who makes it itself. But here we have a bow and we have the breath of the flute, and we can really melt into each other. It's like a good cuvée of colors. And the way they phrase is so going hand in hand with my way of singing.
Leise fliegen meine Lieder durch die Nacht zu dir. In den stillen Hain hernieder, Liebchen, komm zu mir. Flüstern schlanke Wipfel rauschen in des Mondes Licht, in des Mondes Licht, des Verräters feindlich lauschen, fürchte holde nicht, fürchte holde nicht. Hörst die Nachtigallen schlagen, ach, sie fliehen dich. Mit der Töne süßen Klagen fliehen sie für mich. Sie verstehen des Rosens Seelen, kennen Liebesschmerz, kennen Liebesschmerz, rühren mit den Silbertönen jedes weiche Herz, jedes weiche
That's the electronic wizardry of Lauren Sarah Hayes. I said, Lauren, that you built this system to kind of be unpredictable and challenge you. I hope it is tonight. And it's great to watch you because you're so physical with it. Lots of sort of gestural movement going on. And you're using games consoles. And I know that's an area of kind of performance art, really, that interests you. But, I mean, is the idea to kind of, you know, who's in control? Is it the machine or is it the person? Is that behind it?
Yeah, very much so. I enjoy performing with a lot of people and improvising in interesting spaces. So I've developed a system that constantly throws up unexpected things that I have to respond to. So everything is kind of feeding into everything else, making it very unpredictable, very difficult to play. Sometimes I regret my decisions in making it that way, but it keeps me on my toes. I enjoy that risk and spontaneity of it.
We enjoy it too. And the computer's kind of throwing up some words for you to trigger some things. Capitulate, it's saying. Clairvoyant. Collaborate. Compassion. I'll leave it to get on with that. Thank you, Lauren. We're going to hear a little bit more from you tonight, but we now have, in another part of this very busy stage, BBC stage at the Hub here in Edinburgh, James Rodderson and Aidan O'Rourke back to give us another of their well-chosen sets of words and tunes. And here the date is the 3rd of April.
There was once a man so old that most of his family and all of his friends had left the world long before him. He had been in the war, and when he spoke of that time, it seemed to anyone watching that he was not only mentally but also physically reliving his experiences. Even when, overcome by the power of imagination, he lapsed into silence, his legs and arms would jerk and twitch, his whole body move as he refought battles. His young relatives, for whom the war was only history, were thankful that they had not had to undergo such experiences. Increasingly infirm, and having gradually but completely lost his sight, the old man had to move into a residential home. One morning, the staff found his room empty, his bed not slept in. A search was undertaken, but without success. Then the telephone rang. A neighbour had discovered him outside his old house, cold but in good spirits. She was now giving him his breakfast. How, though, had he got there during the night? The house was 5 miles away, along a complicated route, and he was a blind nonagenarian who could not ordinarily reach the dining room without assistance. When questioned, he vigorously denied phoning for a taxi or having been given a lift. He had walked all the way with his comrades, he said, naming 3 men who had been dead 70 years. And whenever one of the party had tired, the others had taken it in turns to support him as they went. He never wavered from this account, and no other explanation of how he had made that journey was ever found. A few weeks later, he had a fall, and shortly after that, he died. It was the old man's grandson who told me of that last March. The story has stayed with me ever since. It makes me think of the dying Balzac, who looked at his doctor and cried out, "Send for Blanchion." When mere mortal physician could do no more for him, the author called for one of his own characters. And who can say that Blanchion did not come and did not bring relief?
Mother was feared in the wild wood, revered in her queenly disdain. Alone was entrusted the wise wood, grime of unbroken campaign. A tongue in her head like a razor betrays every shame of her youth. Her brazen displays of crazy behavior taken as tokens of truth. Oh, oh, the wormwood. Oh, the gold. Oh, the wormwood. Oh, the gold. Father appeared in my dream, and first time I'd seen him in years. Although he was bonny and beaming, my brown eyes were streaming with tears. He took up a crooked old sixpence to silver the water to the distance to brood on the fluke of existence with unwavering view.
So The Wormwoods and the Ghoul, that's one of 10 original songs on Alistair's latest album called Pangs. And that following on from the 3rd of April, Aidan O'Rourke and James Robertson. A bit of band mingling going on with Raymond MacDonald coming in and joining them on a nice bit of saxophone. So The Wormwood and the Ghoul, Alistair. The Ghoul is the poppy, the Wormwood... It's another plant, isn't it? It's another poisonous plant, maybe?
I believe so, yes.
Poison and medicine. Is it a song about that kind of suffering? It's biblical too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I actually borrowed the line from I think from like a 19th century carol that a choir in Glasgow, where I live, sang. And I just took a fancy to the phrase, so I pilfered it.
And at the root of the song, is it a song about suffering?
I'm not really sure what the song's about. I don't often like to be too prescriptive about what the songs are about, in case the listener wants to find their own meaning in it. I mean, not with every song, but maybe more with some songs like that one is maybe more impressionistic. Some songs will have more definite meanings, but not that one.
I'm getting the message tonight. Nobody wants to tell me anything about music. Just leave. Tradition is at the heart of what you're going to do. You're going to sing for us now. I think it's a bit of a shanty, isn't it, this next one? Can we join in?
People, feel free to join in. This is an old ballad called The Golden Vanity, and we got this from late great Scottish traveller, storyteller and singer called Duncan Williamson. And it has a refrain. You can join in. It goes, it's easy to pick up. It just ends the lowlands low, so we went sailing in the lowlands low, and it repeats. You'll pick it up easily if you want to join in.
Let's try and raise the roof of the tent, if that's possible. Band mingling, anybody you'd like to invite on?
Oh yes, I'd like to welcome Aidan O'Rourke to join us on the fiddle in this.
Thank you, Alistair. This is The Golden Vanity.
Tuning here. Thanks for your patience. The Golden Vanity. I have a ship and she sails on the deep, and she goes by the name of the Golden Vanity, but I fear she'll be sunk by a Spanish galley as we sail her in the lowlands low, low, as we sail her in the lowlands low. Then up and spoke a cabin boy, a well-spoke lad was he, saying, Captain, oh Captain, what would you gie if the Spanish galley would trouble us no more, as we sail her in the lowlands low, low, as we sail her in the lowlands low. Good gold I would give and silver in store, and my pretty little daughter who waits on the shore, if the Spanish galley would trouble me no more, as I sail her in the lowlands low, low, as I sail her in the lowlands low. he held in his hand an auger sharp and thin. He went swimming in the lowlands, low, low. He went swimming in the lowlands, low. Then he bored once or twice. For some was playing cards and others playing dice, and the water it rushed in and dazzled in their eyes. And he sunk them in the lowlands, low, and he sunk them in the lowlands, he swam, crying, Captain, take me in, 'cause I'm drowning in the lowlands, low. Throw me a rope, cried he. A rope, you will never get from me, for you sunk the dark girl, the Turk of Admarie. Now she's sinking in the lowlands, low, low. Now she's lying in the lowlands, low. So we swam around the starboard, crying, messmates, take me in. So they throwed him a rope, and his messmates took him in. Then they wrapped him up in an old cow's skin, and they laid him in the lowlands, low, low. And they laid him in the lowlands, low.
So that is the Golden Vanity, and that's almost it for tonight. Let's hear it once again for Alistair Roberts and his trio, for Aidan O'Rourke and James Robertson, for Sue Lee, Raymond MacDonald and friends. And actually, you can hold off applauding for Lauren, because I'll get out of the way, and you can do that a little bit later on. You can applaud yourselves, though, for coming. Late Junction is back tomorrow at 11 with, amongst other things, a mixtape by the experimental theatre troupe Forced Entertainment. And the next live Radio 3 event from this stage will be on Monday with Jazz Now. But for now, let's bring the red curtain down on Late Junction tonight with the wonderfully zany music of Lauren Sarah Hayes. A very good night.